So you've got good people. They're smart, they're capable. You hired them for a reason. So why does it still feel like you're carrying the team? Why are you the one that's driving every single conversation, solving every problem, and then pushing every initiative forward? It's not that they don't care, but something's off. And if you don't fix it, the silence is going to start to spread. This is what happens when initiative fades, and most leaders don't even realize that they've helped create it. The good news is, this isn't permanent. It's completely fixable, and you don't need a big reset to turn it around. In this video, I'm going to show you how to rebuild trust, how to reawaken ownership, and then shift the dynamic so that your team steps up without waiting for permission. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Everyday Diplomat, where we talk about how real-world leaders build trust, lead with clarity, and solve problems without ever relying on rank or authority. I'm Michael Forras, retired Marine Sergeant Major, former U.S. diplomat, and someone who spent over 20 years leading high-performing teams through crisis, conflict, and constant change. I've stepped into commands where morale was absolutely in the gutter, where trust was gone, where creativity had completely flatlined. And I didn't have time to win people over. I had to lead in a way that brought people back to the table and fast, not by barking orders louder and not by handing out motivational posters, but by building an environment where ideas could once again breathe. That's what we do here. This channel isn't about theory. It's about how to lead when the pressure's real, the culture's strained, and when you can't afford to get it wrong. So if you've ever looked around and thought, hey, my team is capable of a lot more, but something is stuck, you're in the right place. Let's break it down, starting with why teams lose their creative edge in the first place, and then how great leaders get it back. Most teams don't lack creativity. They lack the safety to use it. When people hesitate to speak up, when they second guess themselves before offering their ideas, when they default to whatever you think is best, you're not dealing with a talent issue. You're dealing with a culture signal that they've already picked up on. And those signals, they can be subtle. Maybe they offered an idea once and it got brushed off. Maybe they challenged something respectfully and they got shut down. Maybe they just saw how leadership handled tension and they decided that silence was the safer option. Now they're no longer innovating. They're simply performing. They're doing exactly what they know is safe because in their mind, safe means survival. That's the invisible moment where initiative starts to die. And here's the hard part. Most leaders don't even realize that they've helped create that environment. Not because they're bad leaders, but because they're busy. They're focused on execution. They're under pressure to deliver. And in the process, they completely stopped reinforcing the very behaviors that sparked creativity in the first place. Things like encouraging opposing ideas, rewarding experimentation, making space for those half-formed ideas, and then listening without reacting. And when those things begin to disappear, the message becomes incredibly clear. Stick to the script, keep it tight, and don't make waves. Even if nobody says it out loud, the team is going to get the message. They fall in line, they stop questioning, and suddenly you've got a room that's full of capable people waiting to be told what to do. Here's how you'll know that the shift has happened. You're going to notice fewer ideas being shared, less healthy friction, more silence in meetings, and eventually somebody is going to leave and you're going to hear through the grapevine that they just didn't feel like they were making a difference. By then, it's already baked into the culture. That's why this matters, because innovation isn't something that you can just simply command. It's something that you have to cultivate, and it starts with the leadership presence. The way that you respond to tension, the way that you invite input, the way that you ultimately make people feel when they are unsure, unpolished, or unconventional in their ideas. That's what sets the tone. And once you reset that tone, once you create that kind of environment where initiative is actually welcomed, you're going to be shocked at what your team is going to be capable of and what they were capable of the entire time. But that doesn't happen by accident. It happens by your design. And in just a second, I'm going to show you exactly how to start doing that, inside and outside of the room. But first, let me tell you about something that we just released that will help you go even deeper. If you're finding any of this material all too relatable and you can see yourself in these situations, if you've been carrying too much of the weight, wondering why your team is holding back and trying to figure out how to shift that culture, that's exactly why I created Foundations, the essentials of everyday leadership. It's a full leadership course that's built for real-world leaders, the kind who want to build trust, fix broken dynamics, and lead with influence and not just authority. Inside, I walk you through the exact strategies that I've used to turn around struggling teams, re-engage performers, and rebuild momentum in places where creativity and trust had completely flatlined. We cover everything from active listening and decision-making frameworks to conflict resolution, leadership presence, and the habits that drive long-term team performance. And to celebrate the course's launch, we're offering $100 off for all new enrollees, but only until July 6th at midnight. You'll see the coupon code pop up on the screen right now. Go ahead and use it at checkout to get instant access. This is the type of course that I wish that I had when I first stepped into senior leadership. If this sounds like something that you think you're going to need, the link is in the description below. Now, let's go ahead and talk about how to actually create an environment where innovation thrives. If you want your team to think creatively, you can't just ask them for better ideas. You have to create the conditions where those ideas can actually live. That's the leadership shift that changes everything, because innovation doesn't start with brainstorming. It starts with a feeling of belonging. When people feel safe, when they feel respected, and also challenged in all the right ways, they stop playing it safe and they are going to start leaning in. But if your team has learned over time that great ideas get shut down, that questions get labeled as complaints, or that their feedback gets filed under this isn't your lane, they're going to protect themselves instead of contributing. So here's the shift that you need to make. You are no longer the sole problem solver. You are the environment setter. It's your presence, your rhythm, your tone, and your response that tells people whether creativity is welcome or dangerous. And this doesn't mean that you become soft. It means that you need to be intentional. You reward curiosity. You normalize respectful disagreement. You show people that speaking up isn't a liability, it's part of the job. When somebody brings you a rough idea, do you help them shape it, or do you quietly shut them down? When somebody disagrees with you, do you get defensive and offended, or do you just ask questions? When somebody makes a mistake, do you turn it into a lesson, or do you belittle them and punish them? Those moments decide absolutely everything, because innovation doesn't die in one dramatic meeting. It dies subtly in signals over time. A raised eyebrow, a dismissive, hey, we've tried that before, an idea that's ignored until somebody else suggests it with more rank. And every time that happens, the team is going to take a step back. Not because they're fragile, but because they're smart. They're really smart. They're reading the room. They're reading you. That's why this mindset shift matters so much. Because when you shift from driving outcomes to shaping the climate, you stop asking, why don't they speak up? And you start asking, what signals am I sending to them that makes them think that they can't? That's what resets the tone. That's what reopens initiatives. And that's what turns a team that feels stuck into a team that starts pushing forward together. In just a moment, I'm going to show you what this looks like in action. But before we go there, let me give you a free tool that'll help you start building this culture today. If this part of the conversation is resonating with you at all, if you're ready to start shifting the tone on your team and building a culture that encourages real input, I went ahead and put together something that is absolutely going to help. It's called 10 Steps to Confidently Leading High-Performing Teams. It's a free guide packed with simple, tactical steps that you can start using right now. It's going to help you build trust, reduce friction, and unlock the type of team performance that most leaders only hope for. It also includes access to the Diplomat's Dispatch. It's our bi-weekly leadership newsletter where I share tools, mindset shifts, and the behind-the-scenes insights to help you lead with clarity and presence in any environment. There is absolutely no catch, just real-world support for leaders who want to do this really well. You'll find the link in the video description below. Now, let's go ahead and take everything that we've talked about and show you what it looks like in the real world. So, a few years ago, I took over a team that was completely stuck. I wouldn't say that they were failing, but they certainly weren't moving in any direction that resembled forward. No one was stepping up. Everything flowed through one or two key people, and everybody else, they just kept their heads down and did the absolute bare minimum. At first glance, you would think that it's some sort of a motivational issue, but it wasn't. It was an environmental issue. They had come through a string of leaders who ran the show with an incredibly tight authoritarian control, and every new idea got filtered. Every deviation from the norm got completely shut down. And over time, they began to learn that it's better just to do what's asked. Absolutely nothing more. When I stepped in, I didn't try to do a complete overhaul. I didn't walk in with a vision. I walked in with pure curiosity. I started asking questions like, what do you think that we're missing here? Or what's one thing that you've seen us do that just doesn't make sense anymore? What's an idea that you've had for a long time, but you never felt like you could bring it up? At first, people gave the absolute safe answers, polite, guarded, but once they realized that I wasn't correcting them, once they saw that I was actually listening and asking these genuine questions, that's when things started to shift. One junior member came to me after a staff meeting and said that I think we're wasting a lot of time on the way that we do these weekly meetings, but I've never felt comfortable saying anything because it was made aware that it wasn't my lane. I told them from now on, everything is your lane. If you see a smarter way, I would love to hear it. They brought me a completely new system by the next week. It was clean, it was efficient, smarter by miles. We implemented it immediately and we saved hours every week. But the real win, it wasn't the time that we saved. It was what happened next. Suddenly, other team members started to speak up as well. Ideas started flowing again. Not because we ran a retreat and not because I handed out a survey, but because I changed the signals that we were sending out. I stopped expecting initiative and I started inviting it. I stopped looking for polished answers and I started rewarding the rough ones. I stopped filling the room with my voice alone, and I started creating that space where it was safe for all of them to share theirs. That one moment with a junior teammate, it turned into a complete pattern, and that pattern eventually turned into an entirely new culture. Not because I had all the answers, but because I stopped pretending that I needed to. That's what it looks like to lead for innovation. You don't light the fire, you clear the space so that somebody else can. And when you lead that way with consistency, you're not going to just see better results. You're going to start to see your people come alive again. If what we've been talking about in this video is resonating with you, and I think it is, it means that you're the type of leader that builds trust, invites ownership, and makes space for real innovation. And it means that I'd love to have you as a part of this community. We post these long-form videos every week, along with short tactical leadership insights to keep you sharp between the uploads. Everything that we build here is built for real-world leaders just like you. The ones who are doing the work, carrying the weight, and then trying to lead in a way that actually works. So if that sounds like you, I would be honored if you would hit subscribe. It's not for vanity, it's not for numbers and metrics, but because the world needs more leaders just like you. People who are leading with absolute clarity, consistency, and care. And that's what we're building here, one lesson at a time. All right, let's go ahead and bring this home. By now, you have seen the pattern. When a team stops taking initiative, it's rarely because they're lazy. It's because something in the culture, usually a person, told them that it wasn't worth the risk. And that doesn't change by accident. It changes when a leader decides to reset that tone. So here's the challenge that I want to leave you with. Take one action this week that changes the signal. Not a speech, not a memo, just a moment. One decision that shows your team, we do things differently now. Maybe it's asking a quieter team member for their take on something and then giving them the space to actually speak. Maybe it's revisiting an old idea that got shut down way too quickly and then letting the team know that you're open to reconsidering it. Maybe it's publicly thanking somebody for disagreeing with you in public and then making it clear that respectful pushback is not only allowed, but it is absolutely encouraged. Because leadership isn't about being right. It's about making it safe for the right ideas to begin to surface. And your team is already watching you. They already know what type of ideas are going to get rewarded and which ones just quietly disappear. You don't need a cultural overhaul to fix all this. You need your presence, you need clarity, and most importantly, you need consistency. That's what reshapes the culture. That's what brings people back to the table. And that's what turns teams from cautious to creative without burning out the leader at the very center. And if you're somebody who wants to build that type of environment, not just for today, but for the long game, I want to remind you that you are not alone in this. That's why we built the Foundations course. That's why the Everyday Diplomat exists, to give leaders just like you the tools and the structure to lead with clarity, without the burnout or the guesswork. But even if you don't go any further than this video, let this be the moment that you reset the tone, because 5 years from now, your team won't remember every single decision that you make or every speech that you gave, but they are going to remember whether it felt safe to speak up or not. They're going to remember whether their ideas were welcomed. They're going to remember whether you led with clarity or absolute authoritarian control. And those moments, that is your leadership legacy. It's one conversation at a time. So here's one final question that I want to leave you with. What signals are you sending when you choose to say nothing at all? And what would happen if this week you sent something completely different? Thanks for watching. Thanks for leading, and I'll see you in the next one.